So I am here with the lovely and wonderful Diana Eskander, an expert love coach and TEDx speaker. I am so glad that we have this opportunity to talk about your journey as an expert love coach. You've worked with so many women and helped them in their relationships, in navigating love, and helping them empower themselves and being courageous in dating and relationships. How did your journey as an expert love coach begin?
Mm. So I'll give you the unofficial story. I have been really doing this actually really instinctively since I was a kid. So I was 9 years old, and my sister, who is 6.5 years older than me, would come home with her friends after school, and they would form a circle around me and ask me relationship advice. And I just had a full-on obsession with romance and relationships and what made people connect and click. And I would write love songs and love poems, and all my diaries were all about love and boys. And I definitely made a lot of my own quote unquote mistakes and a lot of detours along the way over my own journey, because I had my thing. 13, I met Jack, who's now my child, and the year after I met him, I started a blog called Ask Diana, and I called it Ask Diana because that was always when my sister would be in discussion with her friends and they'd be debating something. She's like, let's call and Ask Diana. So I started the blog with that name, and I was sharing online, and it had a small following, but people were really engaged with the content. And then I started to host meetups in the city, and I'm living in Montreal. Have been living here for 11 years, I think, or almost 12. I can't decide now. Something along those lines. And I started hosting meetups here, and just talking about relationships and conscious living and conscious love, and people were showing up every month. I was hosting it for free every month. And then they started, a few people started to ask me for one-on-one sessions. And it wasn't really something I had considered or even known that I could do. I didn't even know that was a possibility. I wasn't familiar with coaching as a profession or practice. And so I started to do these sessions for free for a handful of women, and just learning what makes people tick, what makes people change. And I was getting some really good results with them, and they, left me these beautiful testimonials, and they were referring me to friends, until one woman asked, what's your rate? And I threw out a number, and that's how it began. And I actually had a really successful coaching practice before getting certified as a coach, which technically you don't have to do. But I really desired to keep learning. So I got certified by the Mind Rebel Academy, which is an ICF accredited school. ICF is International Coaching Federation. And I've studied theta healing, and I'm in the somatic training now. And so I really just have continued to dive into learning. And I've worked with now legitimately hundreds of women. I'm probably approaching 1,000 very soon, around the world, some who are single, some who are in relationships. I work with couples as well. So that's a little bit about my journey.
That's so incredible that you had no idea it just started like that.
It found me. Yeah.
Right? It's just something that out of nowhere you just love doing. It's a gift, and it's something that you're able to impart your wisdom and knowledge on people and help them, which is quite amazing. What inspires you in helping women find love and creating those strong and successful relationships?
What really inspires, this whole coaching has allowed a certain freedom in my life. So there's definitely that, but the bigger picture for me, and really specifically why I've narrowed in on women, and I am starting to coach more and more men. If I'm only coaching women and not coaching men, then there's this gap, right? But that aside, what has really inspired me or pushed me to do this is, I'm sure you can relate to this. I spent hours on the phone with my girlfriends over the last decades of my life, talking about boyfriends, relationships, spending so much energy, so much time, so much thinking power, so many tears shed over trying to figure out love and relationships. And there's so much fear involved in those conversations. And my intention is really truly if we could free up all the brain space and all the emotional space that's taken, that women use trying to discern and navigate their love lives, like what could women do with all that extra energy, right? Like all that extra time and all that extra emotional space. So I really just want to like clear it all up and really provide a space where this can feel so much more easeful, so that you have, like, rather than spending hours in a week focused on your relationship and stressing about it, you can relieve yourself of that and turn around and harness that energy towards something that moves your life forward and even the world forward.
No, absolutely. That's quite incredible. It must be quite the transformation that you see, going from A to B, and probably how much more relaxed people are and how much more fruitful the relationship becomes as a result of all that, which is really amazing. What has been the most challenging part of being a love coach so far?
I would say in the early days, of my doing this, I've been doing this for 5 years now. And in the early days, it was like really attaching to people's results. And I still feel that come up from time to time, of like being really attached to what like success looks like for a client. And so detaching from that has been such a personal journey of like growth, to say everyone's results are going to look different. And then when I actually do detach from the results come much faster. So that's been like a growth of my own, to say like everyone's journey is going to look as it is. Also, like over the years, really discerning who is the type of person I want to work with. So again, early days worked with anyone who wanted to, and now it's like having the courage to say to someone, actually, it's not a fit, and I'm going to refer you somewhere else, and just like getting really honest about who I want to work with, and only saying yes to that. And then of course, like I hold a lot of emotional space. I'm really good at that, so it's okay. But it can be a challenge to witness a lot of emotions, to stay grounded in all of that.
Yeah, I was going to say it must be quite an emotional burden at times, especially when you empathize so much, right? So to kind of create that dissociation or that separation, and also probably not bring that at home or carry that yourself.
Yeah, it's a journey. It's been a journey.
Absolutely, right? But it's a journey without growth.
Yeah.
Under what kind of circumstances do you recommend that a person should seek a love coach? Is it, for example, when problems arise in a relationship, or is it when someone is struggling to find love?
Yeah, well, I'll speak for myself because there are love coaches who work in different ways and different parts of people's journeys. And I've really learned to really only like allow myself to work with people who are not coming from the energy of like, please save me. That's really like that's coming from a disempowering place. And for me, accepting to work with someone from that place really continues to disempower the client, actually. So what I desire is like, and what I really like resonate with and like get really excited to work with, is when someone is not always in a problem, right? So sometimes it might be like you're desiring deeper connection in your relationship, or you're really wanting to meet that person, but you find yourself continuing to meet the same kind of person or end up in the same kind of situation and with the same outcomes over and over, and you find yourself a bit stuck, or you don't even really quite have the confidence to get clear on what you want and to state what you want. And so that's a really beautiful time to seek support. So rather than like, if someone comes to me with the energy of like, you gotta help me, I'm so messed up, I'm like, no, that's not it. I want you to come to me with like, this is what I desire. I see this issue. I really want to move through it. And I know you're the person who I want support from, right? And so it's like, I've written about this before, like support, not saved. It's a really distinction that's taken me quite a few years to make. But certainly, if you're feeling like you're desiring deeper love, you're desiring deeper connection with yourself and with another, that's a great time to seek out the support of a love coach.
So it's more when someone's aware that there is this kind of pattern that they need to break from and start changing that to fall on the right track, is kind of when you suggest that they come to you,
Yeah,
as opposed to
and again,
in a place of compromise.
yeah,
And
Yeah, absolutely. We're even in patterns inside of our beautiful relationships. Even when you're in a beautiful relationship, you can get stuck inside of patterns of resentment or guilt or frustration, and like it's really hard to undo those things without support.
In your years of practice, Diana, what do you find is a fundamental challenge in most of today's romantic relationships?
A lack of emotional awareness. We bring our inner child a lot into relationships, and our inner child is not all bad. That she carries like a lot of our innate wisdom and our innate talents and our playfulness and our curiosity. But if I'm speaking to a female and saying she also carries a lot of our insecurity and our doubts and worry and blame and victimization and seeking to be proved as worthy or validated. So we bring a lot of that into relationships, and we're not aware of how we revert to an immature version of ourselves, both people in the partnership. And so then if we're unaware of that, and then especially now if you talk about people moving in together, it's like bringing this one lack of awareness to another lack of awareness, and it can be quite explosive. So when we don't actually like take the time to sit with, what am I feeling and how is this impacting my life, and how am I showing up versus how do I want to be showing up, when we don't really take the time to reflect on that, it causes a lot of chaos in relationship. And then communication is off because we don't even really know what we're communicating or what we're really desiring to communicate. So how do you deal with it when there's a criticism that comes your way? A lot of these things, like if we don't have the emotional awareness and intelligence, we will be triggered all of the time. All of the time. Does that make sense?
Definitely. So it's like, if I'm understanding this correctly, someone's kind of carrying this, like you're saying, for example, insecurity and whatnot, and this other person, we're going to assume that they're also carrying some kind of insecurity or things that they've carried on throughout their life. And those two things essentially collide when either of them are triggered or both of them are triggered. And then that's when, like you said, the word you used, I really liked it, is explosive. They just kind of, this collision happens, and then things kind of either fall apart or just don't go in the direction that it should. And I do remember some of your seminars or sessions where, you talk a lot about people naming their triggers and recognizing that and dealing with it, as opposed to kind of, I think it's probably very easy to attribute blame to the other person, right? If someone triggers you, they're the reason, but really you're probably part of the reason too, right? There's a reason you're reacting like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
No, that's very insightful to learn all these things from you, Diana. You've been doing this again for a number of years now. What has been the biggest lesson you've learned in your career as a love coach thus far?
Like for my own journey, like as like,
yeah.
Like tell me where you would love to hear that. Okay, like the thing I've learned for my own self. Okay, is that the way I can best serve another is to really do the work for myself. So, like if I'm going to talk to clients about boundaries, like how am I with my own boundaries? Or if I'm going to talk to you about emotional awareness, well, how much time am I spending with my emotions? Right. And it's like really practicing what I preach and really seeing the clear like parallel between the more I grow and do my own work and even coach myself in some ways and have my own coaches, truly the better coach I am and the more my clients thrive. So where maybe at the beginning there was more of a focus on how do I show up for my clients, the focus has really shifted to how do I show up for myself, because that is when I show up as a better coach.
It probably resonates even more with you and with them because you're practicing, like you said, what you preach. I'm sure that's easily seen by others, and you come from a place where you're already very authentic, but even more so, it's kind of solidified at that point, I guess.
It feels more embodied. Is really the word. Like I'm really living this way.
It's almost like a journey. You're both growing together at the same time. Do you find you learn a lot from people as well, from your interviews with people and your conversations with them?
Absolutely. And it's like, because I am so committed to walk, like practicing what I preach, my clients are such an inspiration for me, to really continue to evolve in my ways, right? So like I really, at the end of the day, like my integrity matters so much. So it's almost like this work gets to be like my guiding light of like what continues to help me evolve and grow for myself in my business and in my relationship.
If there's a key message or piece of advice that you'd like to give to the women who are struggling to find a relationship, or to the women and men out there who are struggling in a relationship, what would it be?
Notice where there is a lot of fear. Like notice the parts of you that feel really afraid. And rather than getting sucked into the story of fear or even pushing away the fear, start observing it and get curious about it. So if you're afraid that you'll never meet someone, or that maybe you aren't meant to have a relationship in this lifetime, or you're afraid that your connection with your partner is fading, or that maybe you've made the wrong decision, like really acknowledge those feelings, really acknowledge those fears, give them some space, and then slowly but surely, like how can you move incrementally away from that fear towards a perspective that is more loving and more expansive and more bigger picture, because fear likes to keep us small, right? And it's really unfortunate to let fear drive your choices, your decisions, your actions, because if fear is behind the steering wheel, it is going to take you to scary places. So notice where there are beliefs that are rooted in fear, and slowly but surely start replacing them with beliefs that are anchored in love. That's what I have to say.
No, that's great. Thanks, Diana. So essentially kind of change the platform you're on and operate from one where you remove the fear out of it, which I'm sure a lot of women would resonate with them, right? That just all these things that kind of keep them from growing in a way. Do
Yeah.
you find it's, I know you said slowly but surely, do you find it's through that journey you carry them through that it is possible that people can come from years of carrying that to see things so differently and break away from those fears, which I'm sure play into kind of a lot of anxiety as well. Like I'm sure some COVID's probably accentuated a lot of that, because now many of us are working from home and sitting alone with our thoughts
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
ruminating and worrying.
Yes. Yes. I've seen the transformation time and time again, and I don't mean to make it sound, it's simple, not easy, right? And that's a really important distinction. But really, change happens with first the awareness and then the exploration. Oh, okay, so I have this way of being, I have this fear that, let's see where else it permeates into my life. Let's see what the outcomes have been because of this fear. So awareness, exploration, and then new choices. And as you keep, it's like small incremental changes really can lead to these like huge quantum leaps and transformations. You just got to stay consistent and dedicated and loving and graceful towards yourself, like rather than this expectation of perfection and getting it all right. Can you simply let it be enough that you're evolving, and that like encouraging yourself that you are learning and you are growing, and that encouragement is what will keep you moving in the direction of more growth and more love and more allowance.
That's so beautiful, Diana. It's very insightful and eye-opening to come from that point. And I love how you said essentially not to be so hard on yourself. You're growing and that's what matters and that's what's key. And I think a lot of people tend to lose sight of that because we're so caught up trying to do everything right and executing everything the way we think it should be, when growing alone is a huge part of that. It's been such a pleasure talking to you, Diana. Thank you so much for being such an inspiration and helping so many women in their love life and creating all these transformations. It's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.